Right, before I begin, I have a funny story. I record this multiple times. I know it looks like low effort content, and it is, but I do put a little bit of effort into it. And so my third take, I was like, oh, this is pretty good. Turns out my Focusrite wasn't on, so there's no audio on it. So I was like, oh. Anyways, I gave up and played some Pal World, which is fantastic, by the way. Very buggy game, very janky. In my opinion, very poorly constructed, but it is fun. Anyways, why don't we get started? As always, I'm going to separate this into segments. We got new handhelds, and then we're going to have buyer advice, and then updates or bug fixes, and then user content that I thought was cool. It's all going to be timestamped so you can skip around or skip sections that you find boring. Before we begin, why don't we look at this funny post from Megalodon444. Yeah, this is, my goodness. This is a burn for the WiiU. I want to know how many people bought it and how many people actively played it, because I feel like it gets disregarded. Out of all the consoles, I feel like this one is kind of neglected the most. Very sad. Okay, moving on to new handhelds, we have the RG556 from Anbernic. It's going to have the Unisoc T820, and it's going to have a 1080p OLED screen. So we can look at the screenshots here. It was posted by Economy25531. I don't know what the source is. But yeah, it looks kind of neat. I am a little worried about the pricing because with OLED and Anbernic, it might be a little bit too expensive. But according to the comments, it should be close to a Retroid Pocket 4 and a little bit better than an Odin Lite in terms of performance. So you should be able to hit some of the PS2 games. But, you know, again, we'll see what the price is. They do have a video here playing some games, but I would take it with a grain of salt because they don't show the settings and resolution they're playing at. But this was posted by Gaffa Charge. We'll play a little bit. You know, everyone tests God of War. But yeah, that's another handheld for people interested. There's so many, and the surprising thing for me is there's always someone that likes a certain handheld. So even if you think that no one would buy it, there's someone out there that likes it. Alright, this is from the Retro Tech Dad. I watch all of the YouTube channels that I can because I want to get as much news and information as possible. And this guy covered the GPD Win Mini, which has the 7080-40U. There's a version with the 7060-40U. But yeah, this seems to run fairly well. In terms of emulation, up to Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and even Switch runs pretty okay on it. I think you're going to run it around 15 watts for your TDP. You're looking at roughly like 90 minutes of playtime. So if you're using max power, you're probably going to get like an hour. And if you're playing some more, you know, older games that aren't very taxing on the system, you're looking at around 4 or 5 hours with, you know, Wi-Fi turned off, Bluetooth turned off, you know, screen dimmed. But yeah, I thought it was a cool device. It's probably going to be around $1,000 for the most expensive model. So it might be a little bit out of, you know, people's price range. But yeah, it has the keyboard, it has the joysticks and the buttons. If you want to check out the review, as always, I'm going to link everything that I sourced so people can check it out. Alright, this one is from Joey's Retro Handheld. So he reviewed the Retroid Pocket 2S Metal, which is $50 more than the regular edition. So I was looking at it and I was like, I don't know. This guy reviewed it. Basically, it's the same thing except it's just metal. And he said that it feels better and that it runs cooler. And the reason why it runs cooler is they have heat sinks attached to the entire shell. So the entire shell is essentially a heatsink. So it's running about 20 degrees Fahrenheit cooler. So it might be for somebody, his conclusion was if you really like the Retroid Pocket 2S, you might be interested in the metal, but for everyone else, they might probably pass on it. Okay, for our next handheld, we have the GKD Pixel. There's a review on Retro Game Core. He did a fantastic job as always. In my opinion, it's a little bit too pricey, but he did mention that at RetroKeep, there is a coupon code for $10 off if you use the code Pixel. I still think it's a little bit too pricey, but his takeaway was, essentially, if you want something a little bit larger than the RG Nano, this might be for you. Or if you wanted something smaller than the Miyoo Mini, the original version, then it's like a perfect mix between the two. But for me, I feel like if you're playing for more than 2 minutes or want to play with two hands, that this device is a little bit too small. He did also mention that it scratches pretty easily, so you might want to get a case for it. Next up, we have the AYANEO AM02, which is their mini PC. The AM01 they released earlier was a budget one, and this one's more premium. This one has a 7840HS, which is the full power version of the 708040U, and it will crush emulation. And for modern PC gaming, it's pretty okay. You can expect about 1080p low settings and get anywhere from 30 to about 60 FPS, so that's not bad. Here's the main gimmick. So they have a 4-inch touchscreen here, which displays the FPS here, the TDP, the fan speed, and the hard drive capacity and usage. And then we have CPU and GPU usage, speed, power draw, and temperature. So I think that's pretty neat, but I feel like it is a little bit of a gimmick because they mention like mounting the device behind a monitor or TV, or even in a living room setting where you put it underneath the TV on a console, you can't see the screen and you're not going to get up and access it. Or if it's behind, you gotta try to feel for it. And I feel like it's going to be a little bit impractical. Also, you can't really use it as a display because they have 4 settings where you can see the time and the weather and the date. The third is a animated video, and the fourth is a volume slider with the ability to turn the display on or off. And everything can be controlled in the IS-based software. And it's like, that's cool, but like I can't see it when it's placed normally and I'm walking into the room and I look at my desk. It's gonna be super hard to see that. I wish the display popped up 90 degrees so it can be, you know, like here, like this, vertical, so you can see it, right? But you can't. So I think it's gonna have a niche audience. It looks well built though. Like in terms of hardware, it does perform pretty well. The 708040HS is out already. There's the B-Link SER7. I think Retro Game Core reviewed that. Hockey reviewed another mini PC with the same processor, and they all perform well. And I think the build quality on this is going to be okay. If you look at Retro Game Core's teardown and the AM01, they use the same 4 heat pipe heatsink and the same large fan. So in terms of thermals, it should be okay. And it comes in a pretty compact package. There's a lot of other details if you want to check out AYANEO's video. They go over all the features, but the price point is going to be around $500 to about $770. And that's where it gets a little bit dicey because at that price point, you can buy a budget laptop that's going to perform better, or you can build a budget desktop and that will also perform better. Basically, I don't think this is priced poorly in that competitor products are around the same price. They're around $650 to about $700 for the same processor and same specs. It's just that, you know, if you are an enthusiast and you are willing to shop or wait for a bargain, or you want to build your own device, then you're obviously going to get something better for cheaper. But for people who don't want to deal with that, this might not be a bad option, in my opinion. I feel like there is sort of a niche audience for this in that it's going to probably appeal to, obviously, rich people first. But if you're not rich, then I feel like it's going to appeal to people who live in tiny spaces, you know, people who live in vans, people who are nomadic. I feel like this is pretty handy in that you can just pick it up, set it down, you know, quickly set it up. Okay, moving on, this post is from Janik97. And the reason why I use this is I totally forgot about the Raspberry Pi. But the Raspberry Pi 4 and the Raspberry Pi 5, which is coming out soon, and I believe it's shipping sometime in February, they can be used as retro gaming stations. Back in my day, it was RetroPie, but now I think everyone uses pretty much Batocera. But yeah, that's also an option if you want to buy a Raspberry Pi. You can do a lot with a Raspberry Pi. It's not just a retro game station, but you can use it as a firewall, NAS, you know, there's a lot of things you can do with it if you want to tinker. Alright, finally we have a video from Taki Udon. There's a lot of people covering this, but this is the MIG Nintendo Switch Flash Card. And this is, I think, good and bad news for people who wanted to back up games or just pirate games. But essentially, this device can play any game on your Switch without any mods. So how it works is you dump your games or get them from the internet and put it on your SD card. And then when you put it in your Switch, it'll just boot it normally. But switching games is a little bit janky, and this is how you do it. So you have to eject the cartridge, and then you have to push it back in, and there's a little light on the top. When it turns green, you have to eject it right away, and then put it back in, and then it'll switch to the next ROM file. If you dump your game, it'll dump everything, and it'll basically emulate it like it's the same cartridge. And now here's the downside. Buying used Switch games after this is gonna be kind of a gamble, because if people make up a full backup of a game, and then they sell their game, and someone else buys it and plays it, there's 2 copies with the same unique identifier, you know, and Nintendo will probably ban both of those consoles. So it's going to be a little bit of a risk. And I think Taki mentioned a good point where pirates can take unique ROM dumps and then sell them as pirated version of games. And then you might buy it not knowing that it's a pirated version and put it into your Switch and get banned. So it's Pandora's box, you know, and it's been opened. So it's too late. We can't go back. But for people who wanted to have this device, I think it's pretty neat. All right, now we're going to be moving into buyer advice. This section is going to be mostly about avoiding scams. But here we have a post from Limnitz. How do you pronounce that? There are no vowels. Sorry if I butchered your name. Anyways, I have a post. How do we feel about this? And it's it's a very ghetto post, 40% off on the R36S, it looks like. But yeah, essentially you do want to avoid scams, and how you avoid it is when you're buying it from anywhere. TikTok is okay if they have like a good deal, but you should check who's selling it. If you're buying on AliExpress, always check the store information. If the store opened that month, I would avoid buying from them, especially if their prices are too good to be true. And secondly, always buy with PayPal because it's a little bit easier to get your money back. And secondly, if you don't use your credit card, you can't get it stolen. They're going to have your address, which is, you know, a risk you have to be willing to take, but they won't have your credit card number. And it's easier to kind of file a dispute with PayPal. But yeah, essentially, you want to look at the prices online from the manufacturer and then look at the average price on AliExpress, and you'll know what a good price is. So for the R36S, the average price is going to vary from about $40 to $45 on AliExpress. And then when it goes on sale, and there are sales at the beginning of every month, usually on AliExpress, and then Black Friday, Christmas, New Year's, Chinese New Year's, and 11/11, which is Singles Day in Asia, I guess. But you celebrate being single by buying stuff. I guess it helps you forget the pain of being lonely. You know, you can see what the prices are, and the sale price is going to be roughly $30, $30 to $35. So if you know what the usual sale price is, usually dips below just a little bit, and sometimes with special coupons from TikTok, you can get down 30%, right? But normally prices don't go down that low. If it's too low, it's a scam. If it's too high, it's a scam, okay? Now, the only place where the prices are a little bit high and I wouldn't consider it a scam is if you buy it on Amazon and they're shipped from Amazon. The reason why it's priced higher is you have to import the device, and there's usually fees with that, and then they have to deal with fees for using Amazon's service. So that's why it's priced a little bit higher. You're not going to get it at the same price if you buy it locally. Okay, moving on, we have this post from Platimus OG. He's asking if these SD cards are fake. 1 terabyte for 20 bucks are almost always fake. And don't listen to a commenter who says they're real. They just perform like crap. This is wrong, okay? Because when you buy these SD cards, usually how they function is they take the cheapest SD card they can, which is usually around, 8 gigabytes. It could be 16 gigabytes. It could be less. It could be a little bit more. And then they write the firmware, so when you put it in your computer, it reads as 1 terabyte. And what you do is when you write files to it, it will start deleting the older files once you hit that limit, so it looks like you're always writing data to it. But if you exceed the capacity, it'll just start deleting files. Now that's if you get a good scam card. If you get a terrible scam card, what will happen is you write files past whatever capacity they have, and it'll just brick. You just can't use it at all. Yeah, these are fake. These are terrible. Don't buy these. Just buy an SD card from a reputable seller. I wouldn't buy it from Amazon personally because there are too many counterfeits. The main reason why Amazon has so many counterfeits is because they use something called commingled inventory, where even if it's from a different seller, they just dump it all into one pile because it's faster. And then when someone orders it, let's say from Amazon, they just pull it from the pile. And because it's the same pile, you might get something fake that someone else just put in there. Now, if you want to get technical, I saw someone saying that sure, there are like vendor specific identification or barcoding for these products that are put into separate bins, but usually that costs more. If you want to be safe, you gotta buy products where the vendor provides a utility to verify if the product is fake or not. So Samsung has a utility where you can just plug in your SD card and then run the utility and it'll tell you if it's real or not. Personally, I would just buy it from a vendor like Best Buy or somewhere else that, you know, doesn't have commingled inventory, but this is what we're dealing with nowadays. Alright, here we have another post. Somewhere Sufficient 2 posted their current emulation setup. They have a Miyoo Mini Plus, and they're using their phone, and this is something I always like to bring up. I know it's very easy to kind of fall into the rabbit hole of looking at all these consoles and buying all of them, but if you have a limited budget, and even if you don't have a limited budget, the reality is if your main goal is to play games, I would try playing it on your phone first to see if you actually want to play these games. A lot of people think that if they buy this device, they'll start playing games. Most of them end up not playing anything. Some people do play more games, that's for sure, but I would just check with your phone first and then, you know, look into buying like 1 or 2 devices at most. Alright, moving on to fixes, we have a neat fix for the R36S. This was posted by Malmer DK, who was referencing a post by I Like Burger, and this is a way to make the R36S shoulder buttons more quiet, and they do that by literally cutting out a sponge and putting the sponge in between the back switch and the panel here. We just skip here. The guy cut out a sponge and then he puts some electrical tape to prevent any shorting from touching the circuit board. And then when you hear the trigger buttons, shoulder buttons, so much more quiet. I've seen a lot of people do this. Some other people put a little piece of electrical tape behind there. They do anything they can to dampen the noise. I've seen some replacement buttons with better springs, etc. So if the shoulder buttons are making too much noise and annoying the crap out of you, just put a piece of sponge back there and it should fix it. I think that's neat. We shouldn't have to deal with these problems, but I think that's part of the charm for me is that I get a product that's not perfect in exchange for paying a low price, and I get to tinker around with it. I think that's the appeal for me, is tinkering around with these products and making them work just perfectly or to your liking. Alright, we have another post from Mamerson 2023. This guy soldered a rumble motor onto his R36S, and this is a common modification. Some devices advertise rumble and they don't come with it, so if you contact customer support, they'll send you the rumble motors for free. But other people will just buy it and then just solder it onto their console. I've seen this for other devices. It seems to be fairly simple, but if you want a rumble, there you go, you can add it yourself. Finally, I think this post is really cool. We got user NKA Huang. He ported JelOS to ArkOS for the Powkiddy RGB30. So he was saying that he liked the OS's theme. He didn't really like the ArkOS theme, but he liked what ArkOS provided, so he combined the two. And there's a lot of people doing work here, and there's a lot of updates to this. So yeah, I think that's pretty neat. If you're like, oh, I would like a better theme for my operating system, and you have an RGB30, check this thread out. Okay, finally, we're moving on to user content that I thought was cool. We're going to start with this post by Startled Dan. Look at this RGB30 Pico 8 on the go development environment. Man, I didn't think this would work, but apparently it does. This guy connected a keyboard and mouse combo that connects via a PS2 connection. I haven't seen this in a long time. I've seen this and used it for my Windows 98 computer, I don't know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It was a long time ago. Everything switched to USB. You can tell how old someone is if they know what these connectors are. So now this is a post by Xeno Rising Dragon, and he's linking a project that the YouTuber Dr.K did. This guy is a Korean YouTuber. He took a mini PC and then hacked it together with a 4060 eGPU, and it's powered by batteries and attached to a screen. If you look here,
아이들이 대부분 그렇습니다. 이 컨트롤러 보드가 잘 고장납니다.
this guy's crazy. I watched some of his other videos, and honestly, I think this guy is a legitimate hacker in terms of hardware. He's just like, he's figuring stuff out on the go. He's not really referencing a lot of other people's materials. He just literally solves problems on his own. And I'm sure he references other people's materials for certain things, but this is pretty neat. You can see there's just batteries here, and he's like hot gluing stuff, and he's like, oh, there weren't any places to drill for a screw here. That's why I drilled it here instead, or I glued it here instead. You know, I think that's pretty interesting. And anyways, I think this is probably one of the most entertaining channels to watch in terms of people actually hacking stuff. Another channel that I really like is Macho Nacho Productions. So he kind of showcases hardware mods that other people made and shows how to put it together. And honestly, the hardware modding scene is very fascinating, and they're very smart people, and I really like how they don't give up on the old consoles and instead find ways to breathe new life into them. Okay, moving on to this post by Ocelot08. So basically said the multistand is now parametric, and I think you can modify this layout to fit your device and then print it on your 3D printer, and I believe he'll links the files. I think this is pretty neat because someone took a blueprint and then adjusted it and made it tweakable for anyone, and you can just, you know, toy around with it and then make it fit your device. I think that's pretty awesome. Alright, we got this post. There are so many of these posts. I wish I could link all of them, but then this video would take an hour. This post was made by PandaLove3. And yeah, there's this trend going on right now in the subreddit where people are taking consoles and then putting them on the mobile controllers. There's some, I gotta say, some combinations were abomination, and this one is certainly an abomination too. Someone took a Nintendo Switch, which already has controllers, and then stuck them in another controller. I don't like why. But yeah, it was interesting because, oh no, next Steam Deck, please? No, Cashew. No. Yeah, the comments are funny. Who hurt you? There's a lot of entertaining posts in the subreddit if you want to check it out. A lot of entertaining people. Okay, this one, we'll end with this post. This one was too real, okay? Cute relationship 656. You're being too real here. In the drive-thru getting a delicious burger with my Miyoo Mini. I have no friends and am totally alone. Oh, man. Oh, man. Where's the meme picture? I don't think it was in this post, but there's one where there's a guy alone in the corner, and he's like, they don't know I have 7,000 playable ROMs in my pocket right now, where everyone is just hanging out and flirting with each other. Anyways, I don't think this, you know, represents the community, because I feel like most of them are older people, you know, 30s and 40s with families and everything, but you never know. Alright, that's gonna be it. Thank you so much for dropping by and watching. I really do appreciate it. I try to verify as much as I can, but obviously take everything that I said with a grain of salt, and take everything on the internet with a grain of salt, because it's easy to fake this stuff, and that's why I link all the sources so you can verify it yourself if you want. Okay, that's gonna be it. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And as always, hope you guys are staying safe and sane out there, and I'll catch you guys next time.